We are counting down the 20 worst sailboat models to own in 2026. A new wave of financially toxic vessels that can drain your wallet faster than a leaking hull. They range from hidden steel traps that can require $30,000 in saw work to paperwork pitfalls where a single missing document makes your boat uninsurable. These entries fall into 4 threat categories: buried metal, doomed materials, catastrophic design, and insurance-busting bureaucracy. Some will surprise even veteran sailors. Several good boats now carry repair costs that eclipse their actual value. So, which model kicks off this rapid-fire countdown? Let us start with number 20. Buried deep inside the Island Packet 38, the chainplates, critical metal fittings anchoring the mast, are sealed in fiberglass where no one can see them. Over decades, water finds its way in. Rust eats away at the steel, hidden. Until the day a surveyor's hammer or moisture meter signals trouble. In 2026, insurers have caught on. They now demand proof that these chainplates are sound, often requiring X-ray or non-destructive testing before they will even consider coverage. There is no shortcut. Verifying, let alone replacing, these chainplates means unstepping the mast and cutting out large sections of the interior with a saw. Boatyard invoices for this job routinely top $30,000, sometimes more than half the boat's resale value. For owners, it is a financial trap. Without documented repairs, most underwriters will simply walk away. The Island Packet 38 lands at number 20, not because its flaw is the most catastrophic, but because it turns a hidden maintenance chore into a deal-breaker in today's market. Iron fuel tanks hidden deep in the Whitby 42 present a threat that goes beyond simple maintenance headaches. After decades afloat, these tanks corrode from the inside out, leaking diesel into the bilge where the damage stays invisible until it becomes a crisis. When contamination is discovered, owners face a legal and financial gauntlet. Environmental regulations in 2026 require immediate action, including hazardous materials permits, professional fuel removal, and certified cleanup teams. The process cannot even start until the engine is lifted out, a job that alone can run into 5 figures. Diesel spills trigger steep fines, sometimes reaching tens of thousands of dollars, and the clock starts ticking the moment a leak is reported. Boatyards quote $20,000 to $45,000 for a full tank extraction and safe disposal. For many Whitby 42s, that bill matches or exceeds the boat's resale value. The risk is not just hidden steel, it is the liability that follows wherever the boat goes. The Tiana 37 delivers a double blow that sinks even the most optimistic refit budget. First, there is the black iron fuel tank, buried where only a full interior teardown can reach it. After decades, these tanks rot from the inside out, and pulling one means gutting the boat, and the costs rival the Whitby 42 tank fiasco. But that is just the start. The real wallet buster is the teak deck, screwed down over a leaking core. By 2026, teak has become so rare and expensive that replacing a deck can top 6 figures. Carpentry shops quote lead times in months, not weeks, and the bill alone can double the hull's value. Owners call it the Taiwanese turkey, a boat built to impress at boat shows but hiding flaws that multiply repair costs by 200% or more. When both the tank and deck fail, the numbers stop making sense. Brokers quietly steer buyers elsewhere. Inside the Irwin 65, a hidden steel grid was supposed to reinforce the hull. Instead, it became the boat's downfall. Over decades, moisture seeps through microscopic cracks in the fiberglass and reaches the steel. Rust begins to spread, and as it expands, it lifts the fiberglass tabbing that binds the grid to the hull. Surveyors have documented cases where this expansion leads to separation, an invisible failure until the hull flexes or cracks under load. Repair is not just expensive, it is uneconomic. The process would mean cutting out large sections of the interior, grinding away the failed grid, and rebuilding the structure from scratch. No yard will quote the job because no owner can afford it. By 2026, the Irwin 65 carries a fleet-wide stigma. Insurers see the model on an application and issue an automatic decline. The risk is not just hidden, it is unfixable. For buyers, this means a boat that cannot be sold, insured, or safely sailed. Mild steel keel bolts anchor the Beneteau. First 456 to the sea, but in 2026, that detail turns ownership into a paperwork minefield. Insurers now require non-destructive testing, NDT, or X-ray scans to prove those bolts have not corroded out of sight. The process is not simple. Radiography vans are scarce, and scheduling an appointment can take months, especially in busy coastal regions. One failed plate or questionable scan means a full bolt replacement, a job that can run $18,000 to $40,000 once the keel is dropped and the old hardware is extracted. No surveyor will sign off without fresh images, and underwriters will not touch the policy if the paperwork is not perfect. For buyers, it is not just the risk of hidden rust. It is the reality that a single missing document or delayed test can turn a promising deal into a dead end. The Beneteau First 456 sits here because the flaw is procedural as much as physical. The barrier is not just steel, it is red tape. Moisture finds its way into the hull of the C&C Landfall 38 through the smallest crack or fitting, and once inside the balsa core below the waterline, acts like a sponge. Over time, this trapped water leads to soft spots, rot, and eventually delamination, where the outer fiberglass skin separates from the weakened core. By 2026, marine insurers treat this flaw as a red flag. The days of poking around with a moisture meter are over. Surveyors now use thermal imaging, which reveals a wet core instantly. If the scan shows a single dark patch, underwriters demand a recent dry core certificate before they will consider writing a policy. Without it, the boat is uninsurable, no matter how well it sails. Owners face a tough choice: pay for an expensive core replacement, often running tens of thousands of dollars, or walk away from the deal. The C&C Landfall 38 lands here because its hidden balsa core turns a classic cruiser into a financial risk, visible only through a scan and a stamp on the paperwork. Blisters on the Valiant 40 are not just cosmetic, they are the legacy of a fire-retardant resin used in the late 1970s, known to the boating world as the pox. This is not a surface problem. Over years, water seeps through the gel coat, reacting with the resin and forming thousands of dime-sized blisters beneath the surface. Thousands of blisters mean the hull is compromised well below what you can see. These are not the kind you can sand and patch. When the hull is covered, the only real solution is a full bottom peel, stripping away every inch of compromised laminate, drying the hull for weeks, and rebuilding with new fiberglass and a modern barrier coat. This has to be done correctly, and full repairs are time-consuming. In 2026, labor rates have soared to $160 an hour, and a yard quote for this job regularly tops $40,000. That is more than the resale value of many Valiant 40s. Even after the work, owners face questions about compatibility between old and new materials. Insurers and surveyors know the history, and a blistered Valiant is almost impossible to sell without documented repairs. Almost no buyer will take the risk without full records. Chemistry, not just age, turns this classic into a financial black hole. Deck replacement on the Chioi Lee Clipper 42 has become a financial nightmare by 2026. The original design features teak planks screwed directly into a plywood core, a decision that seemed classic at the time, but now spells disaster for owners. Every screw is a potential leak, and once water gets beneath the teak, the plywood turns to mush. Since 2024, old-growth teak has become so scarce that yards refer to it as unobtainium. Even if you can find the lumber, the labor is staggering. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of screws must be removed, the old deck torn away, new core rebuilt, and fresh teak laid plank by plank. Skilled carpenters now command $160 an hour, and the job can eat up 600 hours or more. Quotes for a full deck replacement regularly cross the six-figure mark, more than the resale value of the entire boat. For most owners, a worn-out teak deck is not just a cosmetic issue. it is a financial dead end. Leaks on the Formosa 41 aren't just a nuisance. They are a life sentence for anyone hoping to stay ahead of the next repair bill. Decades of water intrusion turn the hull porous, letting moisture creep into every seam and joint. Where fiberglass flexes, cracks form, and stains run down the topsides faster than any owner can scrub them away. The wood spars, once a mark of classic style, become a ticking clock. Rot sets in from the inside, and by the time soft spots show, replacement is the only option, often costing more than the boat is worth. Surveyors document hull flex and rail cracks as a matter of routine, and the list of deferred projects grows longer with each season. Marinas have started to refuse slips to these boats, citing both safety and appearance. For the Formosa 41, there is no finish line, just an endless spiral of patchwork, expense, and mounting frustration. Ferro cement hulls promised affordable dreams, but by 2026, the Hartley 32 sites in a strange kind of exile. The problem isn't rot or rust, it's paperwork. Most marinas require proof of liability insurance before they will rent a slip. But almost every major insurer has dropped ferro cement from their risk pool, citing unpredictable repairs and a lack of standardized construction. Without coverage, owners can't get a slip, no matter how well the boat sails or how carefully it is maintained. Brokers call it the no liability, no slip rule. The only option left is to anchor out, living off the grid and shuttling to shore by dinghy. For many, this means a life on the margins, no shore power, no easy access to services, and constant worry about local enforcement. The Hartley 32 is not sunk by a single flaw, but by a system that no longer recognizes its right to exist. In a market ruled by policy, not passion, this boat is truly homeless. Cracks in the keel grid of the Bavaria 42 match have become a telltale sign of trouble for surveyors and buyers alike. The issue traces back to the original engineering, an undersized grid meant to anchor the keel securely to the hull. Over time, repeated flexing at sea exposes the weakness. Surveyors now hunt for spider cracks radiating from the grid, knowing these can signal flex or even separation. Insurers have responded by demanding ultrasound or advanced imaging to confirm the grid's integrity before they will consider coverage. Even when repairs are made, reinforcing the grid and patching the cracks, the stigma lingers. Brokers report that buyers approach these boats with suspicion, often walking away or demanding steep discounts. The reality in 2026 is that a Bavaria 42 match can pass every test and still struggle to find a new owner. The design flaw is repairable, but the financial damage is lasting. Once a boat is flagged for grid issues, its value drops and rarely recovers, no matter how much work has been done. Moisture works its way down the mast of the Hunter Passage 42, slipping past aging seals and settling into the heart of the boat. Hidden beneath the cabin sole's sow, the compression post and crossbeam are supposed to carry the weight of the rig safely to the keel. But as water seeps in, rot takes hold. The post softens, the beam beneath the cabin roof begins to sag, and the entire load path starts to collapse. Owners often notice the warning sign too late. The mast step sinks, warping the deck and cracking interior joinery. Fixing this is not a matter of tightening bolts or swapping a fitting. It means tearing apart the main cabin, cutting away cabinetry, and rebuilding the structural core from scratch. Boatyard estimates for a full repair can run from $20,000 to $50,000, depending on how far the damage has spread. In 2026, surveyors know the signs and insurers will not touch a Hunter Passage 42 without proof the rot has been stopped. For buyers, the risk is not just cosmetic. If the post or beam fails underway, the mast can buckle in a single gust. This is a flaw that turns a comfortable cruiser into a safety hazard, and the cost to put it right often matches or exceeds the value of the boat itself. Bulkhead tabbing in the Lagoon 400 has become a case study in how modern catamaran construction can hide fleet-wide structural risks. The problem starts with the way these boats manage stress. Instead of a single deep keel, catamarans rely on a network of bulkheads bonded to the hulls and bridge deck. Over time, especially in heavy seas, repeated slamming forces can cause the fiberglass tabbing that joins these bulkheads to delaminate or crack. Surveyors have documented entire fleets where the tabbing separates invisibly behind furniture and panels, weakening the boat's ability to distribute loads. Insurers, in 2026, now require owners to provide documented proof of reinforcement, either factory documentation of an improved layup schedule or aftermarket upgrades like carbon knees or additional laminate. Without this paperwork, underwriters treat the Lagoon 400 as a high-risk proposition, often declining coverage outright. The cost to retrofit proper tabbing or install carbon knees can run into the tens of thousands of dollars, and owners who skip it risk both safety and resale value. In the current market, the entire catamaran segment faces scrutiny, but the Lagoon 400 stands out for the sheer number of advisories and required fixes. For buyers, the burden is not just hidden damage, it is the expectation to prove on paper that the structure can handle the sea. Freedom Yachts promised a revolution with the Freedom 40, a carbon fiber mast free of stays and shrouds, sleek and modern in the early 1980s. But time has turned that promise into a financial trap. The original builder is long gone, and those pioneering carbon spars are now irreplaceable. If a mast fails, whether from age, a lightning strike, or unseen delamination, owners face a harsh reality. There is no off-the-shelf replacement. Instead, the only option is a custom fabrication quoted by specialty shops at $90,000 or more, often double what the boat itself is worth. Even finding a yard willing to take on the job can mean months of waiting, as carbon fiber expertise has become rare and expensive. Insurance adjusters know the story. One dismasting and the boat is a total loss. Brokers warn buyers away and surveyors flag every Freedom 40 with the same note: obsolete rig, parts unavailable, catastrophic replacement cost. When obsolescence can sink a boat faster than a storm, the Freedom 40's place on this list is sealed. Early Catalina sailboats, built before the mid-1990s, are haunted by a flaw that is as visible as it is expensive. Over time, water seeps into the plywood embedded in the keel stub, the section where the keel meets the hull. The result is a telltale gap at the joint, known among surveyors and brokers as the Catalina smile. Fixing the problem is not a quick patch. The repair requires dropping the keel, grinding out all the soaked wood, rebuilding the stub with new materials, and re-glassing the joint. Labor alone can stretch into weeks, with boatyard bills climbing well past $15,000. Buyers know this, and so do brokers. The moment the smile appears, $15,000 is deducted from the asking price, no negotiation. Even if the rest of the boat shines, this flaw is so common and so costly that it is baked into the market. For early Catalinas, the smile is more than a crack. It is a price tag that never goes away. Every Morgan Out Island 41 carries a deadline hidden in its rigging. Insurance companies in 2026 enforce a strict 15-year replacement rule for standing rigging, wires, turnbuckles, and terminals that hold the mast upright. After that, coverage is denied unless owners can produce a fresh invoice or a detailed inspection report. But the rule is not the real problem. The market for marine-grade wire has collapsed under supply chain delays. Rigging shops now quote lead times of 12 weeks or more just to get the right wire delivered. Some owners wait all summer, their boats stuck in the yard, unable to sail or even renew a slip contract. Without a rigging certificate dated within the last 15 years, insurers refuse to bind policies. No coverage, no marina, and no financing. The backlog is not just an inconvenience, it is a financial trap that can leave a boat unsellable or stranded. Brokers report deals collapsing over a missing wire receipt. The Morgan Out Island 41 lands in the top 5, not because of a catastrophic flaw in its hull or hardware, but because the calendar and a broken supply chain can turn paperwork into a dead end. In this market, Bureaucracy is not just annoying, it is a force that can sink a deal before the first line is cast off. At 40 years old, the Pearson 365 faces a new kind of risk, one that has nothing to do with how well the boat was built, but everything to do with how insurance companies count value. In 2026, most carriers enforce a strict 40-year age rule. Once a boat crosses that threshold, its actual cash value, what the insurer is willing to pay out in a claim, drops to a fraction of its replacement cost. This flips the economics of ownership. A minor collision or lightning strike that results in an $8,000 repair bill can trigger a total loss declaration on a Pearson 365 with a market value of $20,000. The insurance company writes a check for the boat's depreciated value and takes the hull, regardless of how much the owner has invested in upgrades or maintenance. Brokers call this the depreciation cliff. It is not about catastrophic damage or structural failure, it is the accounting that totals the boat. Owners are left with little leverage. They either accept the payout and walk away, or buy back a salvage title and face higher premiums, lower resale value, and a mountain of paperwork. For the Pearson 365, the threat is not hidden in the hull or deck. It is in the fine print where the numbers simply stop adding up. A Hunter 450 in perfect condition, with fresh rigging and a spotless survey, still cannot escape a new kind of blacklist in 2026. The problem isn't the boat, it's the map. Insurance carriers have drawn hard boundaries around hurricane-prone zones like Florida and the Gulf Coast, and any hull inside those lines is now an automatic decline. Underwriters call it capacity withdrawal, but for owners, it means every renewal notice comes with a warning: move your boat or lose your coverage. Some companies have pulled out entirely, while the few left behind offer surplus lines at 3 times the old premium, with deductibles that make a claim almost pointless. Brokers share stories of deals collapsing overnight, not because of survey findings, but because a zip code falls inside the exclusion box. Even boats hauled out and shrink-wrapped for summer cannot escape the risk map. Owners scramble to find specialty insurers, only to discover the list of eligible marinas shrinking by the month. In this new regime, location trumps maintenance, upgrades, and even pedigree. The Hunter 450 lands in the top 3 not for any flaw in its build, but because geography alone can turn a seaworthy cruiser into a stranded asset, uninsurable regardless of its history. A home-built sailboat might look like a bargain, but in 2026, it is a non-starter for anyone hoping to get insurance or even a marina slip. The problem starts with paperwork. Every production boat sold in the United States since 1972 carries a hull identification number, HIN, stamped into the transom. This number ties the boat to its builder, its year, and its original design specs. Without it, there is no easy way to prove the boat's identity, history, or compliance with safety standards. Most one-offs and backyard builds have no HIN at all. Some carry homemade plaques or state-issued numbers, but those do not satisfy the underwriting engines now driving the marine insurance market. In 2026, insurance applications are processed by automated systems that cross-check every HIN against national databases. If the number is missing, or if the system flags the builder as unknown or custom, the application is instantly rejected. There is no human review and no appeal. Brokers cannot override the decline, they are locked out by the portal itself. Even boats with decades of safe cruising, careful maintenance, and solid surveys hit a brick wall if the paperwork does not match. The same goes for imported boats with erased hull numbers, or heavily modified hulls that cannot be traced back to a recognized manufacturer. This is not just a technicality. Without insurance, most marinas will not rent a slip, lenders will not finance a purchase, and many states will not issue a new registration. The boat becomes an orphan, unwelcome in most harbors, and unsellable through legitimate channels. Owners sometimes try to work around the system by registering as a homemade vessel, but that only gets them so far. Automated underwriting has no patience for ambiguity. In the current market, a missing HIN is not just a hassle, it is a hard stop. The risk is not fire or flood, but the absolute inability to prove the boat's identity when it matters most. A $2,000 battery upgrade sounds harmless, just a modern touch to a well-loved Gemini 105M catamaran. But in 2026, that single decision can turn the boat into a financial dead end. The problem is not the batteries themselves, it is how they are installed. Lithium iron phosphate systems promise lighter weight, faster charging, and longer life. Owners order kits online, watch a few tutorial videos, and wire up their own battery banks. The new batteries slide easily into the old compartment, often with a basic battery management system and a few zip ties holding cables in place. The boat starts, the lights work, and the owner feels ahead of the curve. Standard insurance rules have been rewritten. Lithium battery fires, even if rare, are fierce enough to destroy a boat in minutes. Standard policies now require every lithium install to meet the American Boat and Yacht Council E13 standard, a technical checklist that covers overcurrent protection, cell temperature monitoring, battery management system integration, and certified wiring diagrams. Insurers want a signed receipt from a certified installer, a copy of the battery management system certification, and a photo log of the work. Without this paperwork, the application is flagged and declined. No exceptions, no appeal. Even a flawless do-it-yourself job, if it lacks American Boat and Yacht Council documentation, is treated as a fire claim waiting to happen. Surveyors and brokers have seen the fallout. A Gemini 105M with a lithium bank but no paperwork sits unsellable, marooned at the edge of the marina. Marinas themselves have joined the crackdown. Dockmasters ask for proof of insurance before renewing slip contracts. No insurance, no slip. Some owners try to revert to lead-acid batteries, but the stigma lingers. Every survey notes the past lithium install, and every application is scrutinized for hidden upgrades. The market for these boats collapses, not because of a catastrophic fire, but because the risk is now unquantifiable. Underwriters call it a binary hazard. Either the paperwork is perfect, or the boat is untouchable. The stress of compliance goes beyond the technical. American Boat and Yacht Council certified installers are booked for months, and the cost of a compliant install can triple the price of the do-it-yourself job. Owners face a choice: pay thousands for a professional retrofit, or accept that their boat cannot be insured, financed, or even docked legally. Brokers report that buyers walk away as soon as they hear the words, "do-it-yourself lithium." Even a single missing invoice is enough to kill a sale. Compliance now costs time and money the hobbyist owner often does not have. The Gemini 105M lands at number 1 for a reason. No other flaw on this list is so absolute, so immediate in its consequences. A $2,000 battery upgrade, done without the right paperwork, can erase the entire value of the boat in a single underwriting cycle. The era of casual upgrades is over. In 2026, the smallest shortcut can turn a popular catamaran into a financial write-off. For owners and buyers alike, the message is clear. When it comes to lithium, there is no room for error and no second chance. Across all 20 entries, a harsh pattern emerges. In 2026, hidden costs and tightening insurance rules turn yesterday's affordable classics into financial traps. What matters most isn't just age or design, it is whether a boat's flaws are now unfixable at any sane price. In today's market, just a little work can sink your dreams before you ever set sail. Which model almost had you reaching for a checkbook? Share your near misses in the comments below.